All right, sis. I think we're good to go. We're ready.
Alrighty.
We're live.
Good morning. It is Wellness Wednesday. And today our topic is communication and relationships. Over the past few weeks, we've been talking about relationships and any type of relationships, not just relationships with like your partner. Because I feel like when people hear relationships, the first thing they think about is like the intimate relationship that you have with like your boyfriend, your girlfriend, or your spouse, and it's just not only about those type of relationships. So we're talking about relationships as a whole. So those relationships with your families, relationships with yourself, relationships with your kids, relationships with your friends, your coworkers, just anybody and everybody that you come into interaction with on a daily or common basis. So over the past few weeks, we talked about creating boundaries and what actually are those personal boundaries that you have. Are they healthy? Are they unhealthy? We've also talked about expectations. Like, are your expectations too high? Are they too low? Because that can actually cause some emotion. You want to create boundaries and expectations that can have healthy emotional safety. So we talked about that. And then the last topic that we talked about was about values. And so what are your personal values? Because that's important as well when you're having relationships with other people. Whatever your personal values are will show up when you have these relationships with your parents, when you have relationships with family members, your children, friends. So today we're going to talk about communication. Communication is big because it's often misunderstood. People don't always have good communication, and communication can be, said and done and observed in different ways. So we want to talk about how to have like that good communication and how to have a stronger and healthier relationships with people based off of communication. So, what is actually good communication? And first of all, good communication, it's important to have in all relationships. It's really essential in any healthy relationship. All relationships have ups and downs, but healthy communication style can make it easier to deal with conflict and to build a healthier and stronger bond. A lot of times, we can have a little run-in with people based off of like a misunderstanding, but how we communicate that to each other that's the biggest problem. So there's so many different types of communication styles. We won't go into that today. We will talk about that another time, but we will talk about, how to be like, what can you do? Like when you're talking to people, how can you communicate in a good way so that the other person can feel, like you're not coming off as a bad communicator. So we often hear like that, communication is good, but we don't often hear like what is not good communication. So the act of communicating it not only helps to meet your needs, but it also helps you be connected to the other person in that relationship. So when you talk to someone, you want to try to make sure that you set aside time to talk to someone. The biggest issue when talking to people is people interrupt. I don't like when I'm talking to someone. I'm pretty sure you probably don't either, Brandy, but when you're talking to someone and they interrupt, but a lot of times people don't look at it like they're purposely interrupting. They're looking at it like, oh, this is dialogue, like we're having a conversation. But that can be a trigger to some people, because now they're feeling like they're not being heard. And
let me get it out.
Yes.
Start talking. Yeah.
Exactly. And I even had to learn that as well, because like I could be talking to someone and I will like cut them off and then start talking about what, my own opinion. And then they'll look at me like, wait a minute, I wasn't done with my actual full thought and you just interrupted me. Now I feel like I done lost my thought process. you know, so we're going to talk about body language because that is a form of communication. So it's really important that when we're talking to people that we are actually looking, we're trying to like look at things so we can find, like, if you are going to interject or interrupt, you can find ways to interrupt in a polite way. So in order to do that, sometimes we can't be distracted by our phones or, the TV or the computer. The biggest thing that when I'm talking to Mark, when I'm talking to, as soon as he starts talking to me, I'll pause the TV and the first thing he says is, "Oh wow, you just paused the TV." I'm like, because I really want to know what it is that you're talking about. I'm very in tune to, even if it's something that's not important, like to me, it's important to you. So I want to make sure that I'm listening to what it is that you're saying. You have my full attention because, again, body language, that is very important. So that person is talking, and they're giving you like, they're telling you how they're feeling. You want to give them your undivided attention, pause the TV, put the phone down. And it's so, we're always distracted by our phones, as soon as we get the notification, we're like, oh wait. And then the other person is talking and they're like, okay, so there's many ways that we can interrupt, not just by interjecting, by, having a good dialogue, but being distracted by our phones or TVs or whatever the case may be. We also want to make sure that when we're talking to people, we want to think about what it is that we want to say, because it's important so many times, like in conflict, right? Like when you want to address the conflict, I know me, I'm like an over planner sometimes, especially when I want to talk about things. I'm like, okay, what is it that I actually want to bring up when I'm talking to this person? Because I want to make sure that these issues are brought up, or this is, I want to make sure that I have the clear communication on what it is that I want to communicate about. So clear communication is important. You want to think about it, what it is that you want to say. You want to make sure that your message is clear so that the other person hears it accurately and they understand what you mean. What I've noticed with communication is that people, they listen, they don't really communicate. How do they say? Like, they don't listen to, I forgot how they say it, but when a person is talking, they don't actually listen. Like they hear you, but they're not listening,
Not active listening.
Exactly. It's not active listening. Mm-hmm. So again, that then cause conflict, So you want to make sure that your message is clear, but you want to make sure that they understand what it is that you're saying, because a lot of times people, it can be misunderstood. One word can make someone think that what you just said was totally different from what you are trying to say. So you always want to make
sure too. Like I get in trouble a lot for that. Like tone, and I'm like, that's not. But just because I said it a certain way, that's not what I meant.
That's not what you meant.
And then it's a whole discussion about what it is that I meant because of maybe how I said it or
exactly
when I said it. I'm like, oh,
exactly. So it's important that and again, we're going to talk about those, things like, so it's important to understand that. And another thing that people do is like, you want to make sure that you take full responsibility, like, because another thing, the misunderstanding, like the people often, like when things are addressed, they don't actually take full ownership. They'll point out what you did. And I've learned, like, it's important to use those I statements, like, I need, or I want, or I feel. Those are really good statements to use when you're communicating, just to make sure that you're letting the other person know how you feel, but also taking ownership on what is it that you need to do, or how you feel like you interpret the situation, or, just to kind of help create that understanding as well. Just so that you can, and then also accepting that responsibility for your feelings and maybe for theirs as well, Yep. You also want to share positive, feelings about what the other person is saying. Like, I know, like, when we talk about like dialogue, I find that this is important, like not only in like those intimate relationships with like your partner or spouse or whatever the case may be, but in friendships as well, like in family as well. Like, so many times everybody looks for the wrong, right? We're looking for the wrong, especially when, communicating, or like you said, tone. I often teach this to my clients, like when there's a disagreement with their family, friends, partners, and they, especially in family therapy, like this is the biggest thing. We're always working on like the solution and like the positive, like strength, focus, things. So when we're talking about communication, I never ever focus on what the person said that was negative. Instead, I will say like, okay, well, what did this person just say that was positive about you? Like when they were talking about you, because if you notice, a person will say, they're always doing this, but they are good at, so like I try to get them to focus on that. So it's good, like when you're communicating with someone, listen to the positive sometimes, and then, or like, yeah, listen to the positive and say that, like give them that feedback. Like a person can say, like you can be talking to someone and like, I don't like the fact that your tone is always loud, but there are times that you do talk in a calm way. And it's good for the other person to say, well, thank you for pointing that out, because sometimes maybe I don't recognize that I'm talking loud, things like that. It's just good to always share positive things. And then that's the thing is, be aware of your tone. I know for me, like I can start getting louder and louder. Like the more
why are you screaming at me?
Right, like, and I'm like, oh shoot, I'm sorry. Like I didn't even know I was getting that loud. I am so sorry.
For me, it's like, I'll actually I don't know what it is. I can't even tell because half the time, honestly, I'm like, what tone did I use?
Right.
Sometimes I feel like it's just my actual intonation in my accent that I'm like, think you're misinterpreting what I'm trying to get at here, but that's
right. Right. Exactly. And then when we talk,
voice,
exactly, that's what I said. When I can talk really calm and really, calm and sweet, like, but then that, that can be misinterpreted too. So that's when we talk about like our body language, right? Like those non-verbal communication, that can say a lot. You can say a lot without speaking. You can really say a lot. Expressions, rolling of the eyes, like you can make a noise, like whatever the case may be, like your tone, your body pop, your just the way you sit, the way you just like, you could be like not interested, like all of that. Those are all like they all convey a message, you know what I mean? And it just tells a person how you feel about them sometimes,
That message though too, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but that message is also interpreted based off of that person's own history and their own biases. So
exactly.
So like one like you did this right here, right? Like this could be like I do this a lot, but it's not because I'm disinterested. To me, this is like, yeah, I'm really interested. If I'm all up in the camera.
Right.
Because I'm interested. Some people's like, oh, I'm bored. Or some people's like, oh, I just kind of feel relaxed, right?
Right, exactly. And it's interesting too that you say that, because like for someone like me, I talk a lot with my hands. Mm-hmm. That's how I think everybody in my family talks like that. So like that's kind of just like a culture thing. And but for someone else who wasn't raised like that, or that's not their culture, or that's not how that's not how they communicate.
What's going on?
Yeah, they thinking like, wait, are we about to fight? And I'm like, oh my goodness, like no way. Like this is how I talk. I talk with my hands. So a lot of things can be misinterpreted based on how, like you said, another person that's just how they're perceiving it, how they're interpreting it, and it's so important to just learn, like how can you communicate? How can we, understand communication with each other if we both have different ways or different types of communicating? you know. But that's why it's just very important to improve communication in any type of relationship that you have. Like, communication can be, you know, it's so big, it's so broad that it can really just mess up any type of relationship, you know. Some people find it really hard to talk, and they may need time, they may need some type of encouragement to express their views on it. You know, some people are good listeners, or some people just like have a hard time like speaking how they feel or just using their words, you know. And I think about like now, like as my son, as a 4-year-old, you know, it starts as a child, you know, it really does start as a child on communication, you know, because we often, like, I always take it back to, you know, how we are brought up in our homes, and just like, you know, tradition, just everything, culture. And oftentimes our communication is based, like how we grow up and communicate can often go back to like how we were raised, you know. So if we were taught to don't say anything, or, you know, be quiet, or you don't share your feelings, and don't do this and don't do that, like that can affect us as we get older. And now that we are adults, we don't even know how to communicate with other adults. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I teach my child at 4 years old, this is the biggest thing I say to him every day. Use your words. If you're looking at me just crying, I don't understand what that means. Like, you got to tell me what's wrong. You need to communicate. So I then bring it back to communicating in relationships. It's not only with your partner. It's not only with your children. It's not only with your parents, your friends. You have to know how to communicate in every relationship. And again, I say it starts all the way back from when you were a child. There's the way that you communicate. Is it affecting, does it have anything to do with when you were a child growing up? You know, like how can
that inner child in order
exactly
to have better
exactly, because it really goes back to that. It really does. Like, you know, like if I was told as a child, like, you know, don't tell everybody our business, or don't talk to, you know, we are often told, like, don't talk to strangers, often told.
Be seen and not heard. That's another one too.
Exactly. Yes. You know, so it's just certain things that, you know, like little things that we are often taught as a child. Now then when we grow up, we're like, you know, if my parent was so often was telling me, oh, shut up, don't say nothing, don't speak unless you're spoken to. Mm-hmm. Now I ain't saying nothing in my whole 25 years of living or 35 years of living, and somebody say something to me. Now people wonder, like, this girl do not talk, why she ain't talking? Because y'all not talking to me. Like, you know?
Right. One of us gonna have to be the bigger
exactly. Exactly. So we don't even understand it. And then we don't understand it until we think about, like, this is how I was raised. I was told don't speak until I was spoken to. You know? And people be like, really? Like, you really taking that to the grave? Like, this is, you know, this is how I was taught. You know, so we have to, I think, you know, as we grow older, it's important to learn better communication, you know, and it's just like, okay, well, how do I do that? You know, how do I learn better communication? We just have to put ourselves in situations like that help us bring more connection, you know, to expressing our feelings in healthier ways, being around more social situations that are healthy, so we can be able to express ourselves, be able to express our disappointments, because we're going to have that, be able to express our happiness, and, you know, be able to address conflict, and being able to just communicate in general with people, so that we don't feel like, oh my God, I can't, you know, talk at all, you know. People often do like the silent treatment. I do not like the silent treatment. That is a trigger. You know what I mean? Like, we can't do that. Like,
I don't like it either. Yeah, I don't like it either. I don't like it where you're just ignoring me, and I'm trying to say something to you and you're just completely ignoring me. That's just
exactly
like underneath my skin, like, for real.
Exactly. We need to be discussing what happened, like, and be open and clear and honest, And, just do it without judgment. Like, let's do that and not jump to conclusion. Let's find out the facts. You know what I mean? Like, let's talk about it. Let's actually, let the person talk, let them get out how they feel, without because that's another thing too. Like, and, that's why I said communication is so big. We could talk about it all day and night because in every situation is different. We could talk about like how this happens with friends, family, like you
can
got
also like extend this and make this like of a more of a ongoing communication.
yes.
1 week we're talking about communication with friends or communication
Yes.
with,
Yep.
you know what I'm saying? Because
Yes.
it or communication with your children,
Yes.
there's so many different
So
elements.
many different elements.
Yeah, and honestly, like I see communication as a skill. You work
Yep.
on those skills, right?
Yep.
Because of exactly what you said, how we are raised as children. A lot of us have issues with communicating or with hearing, with listening.
Yes.
And not just coming back and you hear something you don't like, not just coming back with the argument, not
Right.
just coming back yelling and screaming and all of
Right.
that stuff. So it's like, this could really be
Yes.
a bigger conversation.
Oh yes, it's definitely going to be a bigger conversation because I think it's really important. Like we're going into 2023 and I feel like people still are struggling with communicating. Like we are just really struggling with that. And, and now I just keep thinking about like the kids, like these kids are growing up and they want to talk about things. They want to talk, but again, like they're having a hard time. Maybe they, like it has a lot to do with, again, going back to that childhood, like how you were raised, like even adults, you got adults who don't know how to really communicate, So yeah, we can definitely continue on with, we can break it down and discuss like the different types of communications in the relationships. And go from
Good.
there.
And also some tips on like how to improve, like just a quick tip.
Yep.
How would you improve your communication real quick?
Right.
Like what's something that people can use in their real life and go ahead and implement it, after they listen to this session, whether or not they're listening to the replay on YouTube, or if they're in our group, you know what I mean? How can we continue that and continue to develop that skill, over time, if that's something that they're interested in?
Right. I think it's definitely important to like, in order to improve communication, I think you first have to make sure that you're honest with yourself about how you feel, because I think like when it comes to communication, and if you don't really say how you feel to yourself, like, let me be honest with myself first. And therefore, I can approach this situation or this person about how I really feel. Because I feel like a lot of times, like, we want to communicate, we really want to communicate these things. And we could say this to ourselves, but then when we get to the next person, it's now like kind of like sugar coated because we're maybe afraid, like how that person is going to react, or maybe we're afraid to open up about our real feelings. So I think we just have to first be honest with ourselves, right? When it comes to communication, be open to like, to the disappointment, be open to like, the communication and the conflict, but just making sure that you're open and clear when you are communicating. That's the thing. Like, you have to be open, you have to be honest, and you have to be clear when you are communicating.
Yeah, I was gonna say that one of the things that really helped me, because I've spoken about this before, but I never felt or like I have a hard time communicating my feelings. I don't always know how I'm feeling, right? Like sometimes I'm aware that I'm feeling something, but not what it is. So my therapist, and that's a shout out to Dr. Lori, gave me I would say the color wheel, the emotion wheel.
Yep.
I have it screenshotted. Don't laugh at me. I have a screenshot in my phone, right? This is real talk. The screenshot in my phone. It's like when I'm feeling some kind of way, I'm like, okay, wait, hold up. I'm not feeling like, my calm and happy self.
Right.
Let me see what I'm feeling. And I really go through the wheel, and I'm like, oh, is it this one? No, it feels more like this one. And, and we communicate like, you know what I'm feeling right now is worry, or what I'm feeling right now is, embarrassment or
Right.
whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like I can actually point to it, give it a name, in moments where my brain is not like able to actually
Right.
grasp what I'm feeling, is really helpful. And I've used that in my communication with my partner to be like, yeah, right now I'm feeling, let me look at this wheel. Right now
Right.
I'm feeling
Exactly.
this one right
Yes.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And that's good too, because a lot of times we don't know what it is that we're feeling, so we
Half the
need,
time I don't know. I'm just
right,
like,
we
I'm
need a
just
guide.
feeling.
Like,
Like I'm feeling away. I just feel I'm
right,
in my feelings.
right, exactly. And that's the thing, like, right, and like, I'm in my feelings, whatever these feelings are, I'm not sure, but let me go look at my guide. Like, there's so many emotions that, I could be feeling all at once, but I don't know what they are. Like, is there a word to help me define this? So that's good. I'm glad that you have that, because honestly, I feel like a lot of people probably would benefit from having that. Just
Yeah. And you know what? I can put that emotion wheel, or if you want to put, whichever, to put that in the group for people to
Yep.
access.
Yep.
Because I think it's a useful tool for me. I'm not
Yes.
even gonna lie. It's a useful tool for
Right.
me.
Yes. I like that. I like that. So yeah, I definitely, and that's what it is. Like, because a lot of times, like, if we don't know what those emotions are, then we shut down, right? We don't know what the emotion is, so we don't tell anybody. So then now everybody's like, what's going on? Like, what is it that you're feeling? Or are you okay? But then we don't even know ourselves,
Yep.
we
Yep.
don't have a name for it. So I like that. I like that idea. That's definitely a good tool to have. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been useful. It is
Right.
definitely giving some value to me and a little bit more understanding. Yeah, so whew, we'll definitely
Right.
put that in a group because
Right.
I know it's gonna
Oh
benefit.
yes. Definitely. Definitely. So yes, I think that, what we'll continue to do is continue talking about communication in the different relationships, and how does that affect these different relationships. What are some tips and tools to help those that are struggling with that, because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who may be struggling with their communication with their children right now, especially in this generation, like a lot, or even with their family in general, their parents, their friends. I think everybody may be having that struggle. So I definitely think that we can continue that discussion and communication in relationships.
Cool, cool, cool. So what's the homework for the group?
So what I think the homework should be for this topic is, what is your communication style? What is it? What is your style, and where do you feel like your struggle? What is the struggle for you in your communication? Some people may not even think they have any kind of struggle, but if we're being honest, open, and clear, where do you feel like your struggle in communication is?
Got it. So how do they figure out what their communication style is? Because we haven't really talked about that so much. So is there like a quiz or a tool or something, or how would they do that part of the homework?
So yeah, so we're going to talk about the different types of communication style next time. But if they can just, I can post that in the group as well too. Like, I'll just post like the different types of communication styles. And if they want, they can do the like little extra and like look them up, and then we could talk about it. But there is those, like the aggressive communicator, if you're a passive communicator, or if you're, just the passive aggressive, we can talk about that. Some people may just be an avoidant. They don't want to talk about it at all, so I'll post those in the group, and then you can choose which one you are, and then just discuss like what your struggles are in your communication.
All right, cool, cool, cool. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Right.
All right, so listen, for those of you who are catching, you weren't able to be on live with us. For those of you who are on live with us, we appreciate you for like tapping in.
Yes.
on time live. You know, we appreciate you also tapping in and to your own health and well-being and moving that forward, you know, vibing with us this morning. For those of you who are not in the group, we want you to join the group. Come and join the group so we can help to continue to coach you. dollargrowthclub.com. And for those of you who are in the group, do your homework.
Yes.
Right. All right. Thank you, Coach Cicely. Yeah. Until the next time. So next Wednesday, we're back at the same. And, you know, later on this week, we got more coaching for you. So.
All right.